Hi, everyone. It's Hallie. We will get started in just a minute. Thank you for joining us. You should be able to see my screen with our title slide, 5 Ways to Update Your Resume. As a quick reminder, you will receive a recording automatically of the webinar today. So you don't need to do anything. Just keep an eye on your email. And we are live streaming on YouTube. I will get everything started in just a moment. Sit tight for me. Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's Hallie. Thanks for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. I'm going to start out on video just to say hello and then hop off just to make sure that it's not taking up too much of my bandwidth. I want to make sure that you all can hear me okay, as well as see my slides. But we really appreciate your time today to talk about 5 ways to update your resume. If someone just in the chat for me could just let me know, give me a yes, just to confirm that you can hear me okay and also see my slides, that would be fantastic. You'll see the chat just at the top left of your screen there. And I just wanted to make sure, and then we'll go ahead and give people a chance to kind of hop on today, as well as the recording to get started and caught up. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Yes, I've got a yes in the Q&A. Perfect. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So I'm thrilled to present this topic to Georgia State alumni, but also our audience as well. Updating your resume, honestly, is no one's favorite thing to do. I know it can be very overwhelming for people. And what we're going to do today is try to break things down and make it as easy as possible. And I guess one of the first things I want to say is that your resume is something that we feel like should be kind of an organic document. Don't feel like, okay, I just have to plow through this and sit down and for 5 hours update my resume and then everything's perfect. You may learn things along the way based on interviews and networking that you want to make changes to with your resume. So try to see it as something that you can work on a little bit, like get it updated, yes, but you can work on it a little bit over time. Like give yourself several days or even like a week to make your updates, because you may want to make some changes and then sit with them overnight, et cetera, et cetera. As I said, I'm going to hop off video just to make sure we've got the right bandwidth for today. So here's what we're going to be talking about today on this next slide. And just as a quick intro to me. So I'm a certified career coach. My company is based in Atlanta, Georgia, but we have coaches in different places in the country. I've been coaching and training since 2002. So it's been a really long time. I've got a lot more gray hair going on underneath my hair where people can't see it, fortunately for me. And I have an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and a graduate degree from the University of Illinois. And the advice that we're going to give you today is advice that we give to all of our clients to help them update their resume. We're going to go through some basics here and give you some tips. And just as a quick reminder for anyone who has just joined us, we are going to send a copy of the recording to you automatically. So just keep an eye on your email, please. Within the next 24 hours, you'll get a copy of the recording. So why are we talking about how to update your resume? It can be overwhelming. As I said a couple minutes ago, I don't think I've had anyone, maybe one person in the 25 years that I've been coaching say, I enjoy updating my resume. People have lots of different issues with it, which I completely understand. It's not my favorite thing necessarily either, like for myself. You don't know where to start. You don't know what kind of formatting you need to have for your resume, what to include. And some of our clients will tell us, I'm not a good writer. Like, I don't know what to say. And other people will even say, I'm great at writing resumes or, things for other people, but for myself, it's tough. So our goal here is to not be like the woman on this slide and help you take some tangible steps towards improving your resume as soon as you can and over time. Why is your resume and your LinkedIn profile, for that matter, important? It's because, as we all know, people scan them very quickly. Employers and recruiters do not spend a lot of time looking at your resume. Plus, we've got those applicant tracking system scanners too that will weed you out if you don't have the right keywords, etc. So it's a big deal because it gets you in the door or not for a prospective interview. And when you're networking with someone, for example, it's kind of putting your best foot forward or not in that case too. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. These are the 5 things we're going to discuss. Okay, we'll go into details with each one of them, and I'll give you some examples as we go. And in addition to receiving the recording from today, if anyone would like a copy of our slides, we are happy to share those with you. You can just send us an email to admin@createyourcareerpath.com, and we can send those over to you, no problem. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start out with formatting. We're going to end with how to handle your employment history. And we've got some nuggets along the way. And I'd like to go ahead and launch our polls when we get to those. If you could respond to those, that would be fantastic. So as we dive in, there's 3 kind of basic criteria that we want you to be considering and thinking about when you're updating your resume. It needs to represent you in these 3 areas. Number 1, obviously it needs to sell you, right? That's the whole point of why we're here. But one of the things, if you look at the second piece here about branding you, that people tend to miss, forget, don't do as well as they could, is when someone looks at your resume right away, you want them to understand who you are and what you bring to the table. So for example, using me, I would be a career coach. I would be that I'm certified, and it would be that my company helps people find the right career path, okay, and the right job for them. It needs to brand you as well, like meaning paint a picture of who you are as a prospective candidate. So it's not just about selling yourself. You want them to get a flavor right away of who is this person, what types of jobs are they targeting, and ideally, it's my type of job that they're targeting, and give me a little bit more about why I should bother reading this resume further. We'll talk about that more as we go. And then finally, we want you to feel really confident as a result of your resume. So meaning that your resume makes you feel more confident and vice versa as a result of like working through it. So let's talk about formatting. And this would be number 1 way to update it. Resumes look prettier these days than they used to. More contemporary, there's use of color. People will sometimes use graphics. There's different things that you can do with your formatting, and we recommend using them. You can't go crazy with it. We don't want your resume to have a bunch of different colors and look like a circus. That would be bad. But we want you to consider, and we've got a quick example on this next page. The text is fuzzy. The purpose of this is solely to show you how you can use color, how you can use shading to help certain parts of your resume stand out a little bit more, but also make it more visually appealing and contemporary looking, as well as easy to read. It needs to be easy to read. Now, I know we said just a moment ago, the applicant tracking systems, the computers are important to get by too. So you have to consider that as well, which we'll talk about today. But when you're networking with someone, when you're sending your resume to a recruiter or hiring manager, you want it to be visually appealing as well as getting past the scanners. So we don't want resumes to just have the traditional black and white and that's it. Consider using color. We like red or blue and sometimes green. Those are our preferences. Consider using some shading in some certain areas. And our resume writer, when he creates resumes for people, he creates really cool graphics to help certain things stand out in someone's resume. Related to formatting, there are certain things you also want to be careful about and avoid. You don't want to have a bunch of different font styles. You want the layout to be consistent across the board. Make sure that you've got enough white space, and do not use underlining because that can trip up the applicant tracking system scanners. And we don't want you to use tables or columns either because that can trip up the systems as well. So these are things on this slide that you want to avoid and be careful of. And we have a template that we give to and use with our clients that can help them update their resume in a way that makes it look contemporary. It has color, it looks really good, but we also are able to avoid these problematic things. So it looks nice, but it's avoiding the tables and columns and the underlining as well, okay? Related to the formatting, one of the things we want to remind you of is when you're emailing your resume or uploading it into a job board or emailing it to a hiring manager or a networking connection, for example, you always want to move it over into a PDF and not send it or upload it as a Word document, because if you do that, it's going to mess up the formatting because you don't know how they're going to open it on their end. So it's okay to have a fancier quote unquote version for interviews and networking and a more plain version that's just text for applying online. But in some cases, if they do allow you to just upload a PDF of it, that's fantastic. Okay. And we already talked a little bit about the right-hand side here. Use color, have a really bold header. You'll see what we mean in the next slide here. And just be careful too. Don't overuse capitalization, bolding, or italics. We want it to look clean and professional. And what we find a lot of times is that our clients overuse capitalization. If something should not be capitalized because it's not a formal name or a proper noun, don't put it in there. Just make sure everything's consistent and grammatically correct, okay? This is one of the templates we give to and use with our clients. And again, I know the content here is a little bit fuzzy, and that's sorry, but it's for a reason because we want to keep things confidential for our clients. But this is another example of where you can use color at the top, where you can use shading to highlight the certain places that you've worked. And also a way that you're not going to be using tables or columns, but you can still lay out your skills section here below your summary. And we also want you to make sure that you've got your LinkedIn profile at the top as well. We have lots of resume and LinkedIn templates that we give to our clients who work with us, but also that people can just purchase if they want to. You can email us for that information if you'd like, but this just gives you another example of the use of blue and some lighter kind of gray shading for your formatting. And by the way, these are the different sections we want you to have on your resume. We want you to have a summary. We want you to have a section for skills and areas of expertise, because that's going to be important and helpful for those tracking system scanners to help get you through the application process. One other thing that you can consider with formatting is you can consider using quick excerpts of testimonials from your LinkedIn recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. And we also like it when people do that and put those inside of their LinkedIn experience section as well. It's a third-party endorsement, can be really powerful and helpful to help you get your foot in the door. Let's talk next about number 2, and this is branding. So I said earlier, this isn't just about selling you, it's about knowing who you are right up front. And if you take a look at this next slide here, and I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll, if you would participate in that, that would be fantastic. Some of this is to know that you're not alone, but just kind of get a sense of who's out there. And I just launched the poll. But if you look at this person's header at the top, this brands them right away because she's got her degree there. She's got some good keywords there. Like, I get a sense of who this person is and what her brand is right away, just from looking at this document. This is what she does. These are the types of jobs that she might want to apply to. Okay. So it's, again, when you look at or glance at your resume, like, you want the other person to know right away, oh, okay, this person is a coach and they're really great at, teamwork and being a team leader, et cetera, et cetera. It's just really, really important to do this. Too many people forget this part of it. And it makes a really big difference whether if you're painting the picture for what it would be like if they hired you or not. And it looks like, let me just publish the result here. Thank you so much for participating in our poll. We've got 60% are saying no, they don't have a header on their resume that brands them. So that would probably be your first action item. Either work with us on it or work on it on your own. But it's really important to have that header be compelling as well as your summary. And we've got 40% that are saying they do, which is fantastic. That's great. Thanks for doing these, everybody. I really appreciate that. So let's go to our next slide here. And this is just one example on this slide of one of the ways that you can handle your header. Our resume writer has lots of different ways that he helps people with this. So feel free to reach out to us if you'd like help with that. But one of the things, remember on the previous slide, that's a good idea is to have some kind of little tagline or blurb about who you are as a professional, what you bring to the table, all that other good stuff that's going to help you with these different things. Okay. So remember that it's a good idea underneath your name to also have a quick little tagline about your unique selling points, why they should hire you, what you're known for, so to speak. Okay. Let's take a look at our third step, and this is your profile summary. So underneath your kind of tagline and your header, you really need to have a good, strong, compelling profile summary. And I'll show you an example in just a second here. This is the short paragraph underneath your tagline that's going to answer these questions of like, okay, who is this person? Why should I read this? What did they bring to the table that is valuable for me as a prospective employer for them? And we encourage you in your summary to have a few numbers and percentages and measurable results. You don't have to have a ton of them because those are the majority of them are going to go in your experience section. But if there are one or two really big highlight, career highlights that you want to have stand out on your resume, put one or two of those things in your summary, okay? Because those are things they won't get buried at the bottom. It'll get the person to read it, and continue on a little bit further down. That's the whole purpose of that, okay? This is one example of a summary that we used with one of our clients. This is one way to do your summary. There's other ways to do it where it's just one paragraph. But for example, this person has a bulleted summary with these specific skills pulled out. And if you look at this, you'll see like this really brands this person very effectively. You know who this person is and what they bring to the table right away. So you can either do it this way, or you can do it as like a paragraph summary that's all kind of one paragraph. And then if you see below here, there's that list, the bulleted list of different strengths, et cetera, et cetera. But this is what we're talking about your summary. It needs to be compelling and really, really good, okay? And so if you don't feel like you have a really good, compelling summary, this is also something that we want you to take a look at. And we do want you to change it and adjust it to each job. This does not mean that you're spending 2 hours on updating your resume or tailoring it to each position. If you have your resume in a really good spot, you should be able to spend around 20 minutes, give or take, tailoring it to each job. Okay, so you want it to be written well enough and have all of the content that is going to be important for the different types of jobs that you're applying to all in one place. But you might make some adjustments to how you word something or a keyword that you place in there. I'll give you a quick example. So we had a client who she happened to live in Atlanta at the time. She was working at Coca-Cola, and she was in corporate fraud and investigation. She was applying for 2 jobs, actually in Texas. One job was at Volvo, and another job was at a family business. The family business job involved corporate fraud and investigation and handling and managing that, but keyword being investigation, going out there and identifying what was going on and making sure things were all, okay. The Volvo job did not involve investigation. It was more managing the corporate whistleblowing program related to fraud and these types of things. So every place on her resume for that Volvo job that it said investigation, she changed it to program management. That was honest because that's part of what she had done at Coke. So we're not promoting lying on your resume. That was accurate for her. But if she had left the investigation, quote unquote, in there, it would have thrown off her application. So for lack of a better way to put it, when we start to talk about tip number 4, and this is relevance, is you want to imagine that the prospective employer is almost like a dog on a scent. And if they're looking for bacon and you throw them chicken in there somewhere, they're going to put your resume to the side and go to the next person. So you really want to make sure that your resume is incredibly relevant each time you're applying to the job, But like we just said, it should not take a ton of time to update it if you've got it in a good spot from the very beginning. Okay. Let's take a look at relevance, which is tip number 4. We want you to make sure that you're highlighting the relevant skills and expertise for that job. We want you to make sure that you're including quantifiable results as much as you possibly can. If you can't always quantify something with a number, that's okay. You can say resulting in, or as a result, or enabled, this to happen within your organization. So quantify it with numbers when possible, but if you can't, still quantify it with the language that you use. And to make it easier to adjust and tailor your resume to each job, we highly recommend that you create and have, and I'm going to start our next poll here, a master copy of your resume. The master copy should not be one that you send out to anyone, because it's going to have everything in there that could be relevant to the different types of jobs you're applying to. And it could be a little bit longer, or it could be a little bit messier because of that. It could even have some of your notes. So the example I gave you before, she may have highlighted investigation in yellow in every place that it occurred in her resume, because she knew that was going to be a possible issue and a place she may need to change things. That made it easier for her to make those changes every single time. So I'm curious out there, so far it looks like we've got 66% are saying they do not have a master copy, which is totally okay. That's why you're here. We highly recommend having a master copy of your resume, and we'll go ahead and publish these results here so you can see, so that you've got one thing with your notes and all of the stuff, because I know that when you're thinking about your resume, a lot of our clients will say, well, I don't want to forget this, or what if I forget to include something? And I totally understand that. The way that you can avoid this is having one master version that has everything on there, and then you can cut it out or adjust it depending on the job, like we're saying. Okay, so let me pull and stop sharing that. Okay, we're good with that. So thanks for participating in the poll. This is just really helpful for us to know kind of where things stand for each person and what is going on out there for people. Now, really quick comment before we go to the next slide is it is okay to have like 2 master versions of your resume if you are trying to target 2 different career paths. In an ideal world, you're not trying to target 2 completely different things, like dentist and circus clown, right? That would not be good. And we would coach you to help you narrow things down and find things that are career adjacent to each other. But it is okay to have 2 versions of that if that's your situation. With the relevance, not concern, but the tip that we're talking about now, these are some of the things that you can add to or just think about in terms of what you want to incorporate into your resume. And what we're talking about here is you can say a lot of different things depending on whether the job is remote or not, and whether there's going to be a lot of change management or conflict management. The point with this slide, bottom line, is that we want you to include soft skills as well as tangible, specific, like technical skills and expertise that you have when you're writing your resume. It's not just about like, well, I've got this number of years, in the medical field, or this number of years of experience with this type of software. Those things are critically important. But we also want you to put things like at the top of this list here, the first several bullet points, we want you to put things in there that are soft skills too, because those are incredibly relevant. And when people choose to bring candidates on board, it's because of these things, not because of the tangible skills, okay? It's also a good idea to get rid of any industry or company-specific language that might be on your resume that would have nothing to do with the industry or company that you're applying to. And in some cases, you may need to genericize some of your language if needed. And I realize language is spelled improperly. Sorry about that. But as appropriate, you may need to make some things sound a little bit more generic just in case, so that it kind of goes across the different types of jobs that you might be applying to. Okay, so that's not always a bad thing to do. Just keep that in mind. Before we go today, in the next several minutes, I just wanted to mention if anyone is interested in learning more about our resume templates, those services, or coaching at all, happy to have a free consult with you to find out if we're the right fit for you, give you some advice, but this is an opportunity to learn a little bit more about our coaching services. That's the point of the call. You can just email us. It's the same email address that it is to get the slides from us as well. So feel free to use that for either purpose. Finally, let's talk about tip number 5, and this is employment history. Employment history, critically important. And this is basically, okay, where you're listing your previous jobs. There are different ways to highlight your job history. Chronological, which is what we normally see, where things are in date order with the most recent job at the top. A functional resume focuses on skills and functions, and this is going to be more relevant if you're looking to transition into a different career path and something a little bit different than what you've done before. There's also a hybrid resume, which is a combination of chronological and functional. If you're not sure which one you should use for your situation, we'd be happy to coach you to help you kind of figure out what makes the most sense for you. A couple of things with your employment history. I just wanted to bring this up briefly because I know there's a lot of people out there that have been laid off. It's okay to mention what you've been doing during that time and that you were laid off in your experience section and explain the reason for it, meaning it wasn't due to performance, it was due to department cuts or, a buyout or whatever it was, okay? So it's okay to talk about being laid off, especially if it's been a certain period, a longer amount of time, so that people aren't wondering why there's a gap. And one of the things that you can do with your employment history is you can break it out into sections or segments, similar to what I showed you before with your summary, where it's a certain skill set or strength, and there's a little bit of a blurb after that. And here's a quick example of that. So this is one way that we like to highlight people's employment history, again, depending on their situation and what types of jobs they're applying for. A couple of other quick tips with employment history. Make sure that on the left-hand side here, all of your verbs and everything's very active and you're using the right tense in every section of your resume. We like for you to have between 5 and 7 top accomplishments for each of the jobs that you're listing there. And we already talked about including measurable results wherever possible. This is one example of how you can have like the header or subhead, if you would, under each of your jobs, bringing out some of these keywords and some of your top skills with a quick blurb about each one of them underneath, okay? And then finally, a couple of extra tips before we get to our action steps and we close for today. And as a reminder, you'll get the recording automatically. Obviously, make sure you proofread, get somebody else to take a look at it because we always miss stuff, when we're reading our own thing. PDF, we already talked about. Make sure that your font is consistent. And these are the fonts that we tend to like listed on this slide. And make sure that your cover letter, and we're going to do our last poll here, would love to hear about LinkedIn recommendations. And I'll talk about that for a second before we go. We want your cover letter to match your resume. And as we said earlier, it's important to get LinkedIn recommendations so that you have them on your LinkedIn profile, yes, but also so that you can use them in different places, whether it's on your resume, referenced in your cover letter briefly, and also to put those in your experience section on LinkedIn as well. We want you to have, in an ideal world, 5 or more recommendations. If you don't have any, that's okay. It looks like the majority of people so far do not. Start working on that. Get 1 or 2. You don't have to get like 5 all in one fell swoop, but start to think about people that you could ask for these recommendations. It's going to help you feel more confident, but also can be really good content for you to use in terms of your job search in different places and in different ways. Okay. So let's take a look at action steps. We would love it. And I'll just go on video here for our final minute. A couple of action items that we would suggest. Updating your header, ensuring your bullet points under your experience section are incredibly results oriented and really focused and tailored to each job. And if you would write down, and I'd love to see it shared in the chat or in the Q&A, that would be fantastic before we go. But please at least write down 1 action step that you will take in the next week. I don't know about you, but I go to these webinars and stuff like this, or a class or a workshop, and I'm all jazzed and ready to go. And then something happens with my teenage son, or the phone rings, or whatever it is. It's easy to get distracted from things. Remember, as we said, take your resume in chunks and pieces and in baby steps. It can be too exhausting to sit down in one fell swoop for like 3 hours, try to update it. And eventually you're just going to get exhausted and be less effective. Break it out into several days during the course of the next week to start working on the different components that we've talked about so far today. Feel free to reach out to us for a consult to learn about coaching, and also for our slides if you're interested in them. It's admin@createyourcareerpath.com. And we thank you so much for your time today. We hope this was helpful for you as a starting point, complimentary for help with your resume. Have a great rest of the day, and take a look out in your email for that recording. You should receive it automatically. Thanks, everyone.